Welcome, everyone, to our National Day of Action broadcast. I am Siggy Melis. I'm one of the national co-directors of Organizing for Repairs of the Breach, along with Kate Ziegler. And we work with the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for Moral Revival. Before we get started, I have a quick announcement. Leonardo, please tell folks how, if they're joining, they can access Spanish interpretation.
Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos. Para todos los que se quieren unir a esta conferencia, el número de teléfono es 609-663-0322. Una vez más, 609-663-0322. Bienvenidos.
Thank you, Leonardo. Welcome again, everyone. I welcome you on behalf of Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris and Bishop Barber, the national co-chairs of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Today, on October 15th, all across the nation, we brought our demands to Main Street. The issues of poor and low-wealth voters were on Main Street. We centered our campaign demands in this midterm election. We mobilized poor and low-income people and low-wage workers all across the country to not only register to vote, have a plan to vote, but bring our demands to the forefront of the political discussion, because voting rights are on the ballot, our living wages are on the ballot, reproductive justice is on the ballot, healthcare is on the ballot this midterm election, our climate is on the ballot. If we ever needed to vote for democracy and justice, we sure do need to vote now. First, we'd like to show you some of what has led to this moment. Right now, we're in our final push to the polls on November 8th, but we have been organizing and mobilizing what we like to call the sleeping giant of the poor and low wealth electorate. And Pauline, please show us a clip of what has led to this moment.
Now is the time for a third reconstruction. We are the rejected, who've been rejected by the politics of trickle-down economics and rejected by neoliberalism. Until children are protected, until sick folk are healed, until low-wage workers are paid, until immigrants are treated fairly, until affordable houses are provided, until the atmosphere, the land, and the water are protected, until saving the world and diplomacy and living in peace is more important than blowing up the world. We won't be silent anymore. If we've got to march, we'll march. If we've got to engage in nonviolent direct action, we'll engage. If we've got to give more attention with the media, if we have to ask workers to make election day a labor strike day, we'll do it. But until then, we won't be silent or unseen or unheard anymore.
Somebody hurting our families, and it's going on. But we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear?
Hope comes from the bottom, from those most directly impacted by the profound evils of America. It's the poor, it's the low wage, it's the locked up, looked over and left out. It's those excluded and exploited who are the very social force who can change this society.
We're calling upon those who have ears to hear, tongues to speak, and hearts to respond, to join the movement to rid this nation of the evil and violence of poverty.
I have been struggling to pay my bills since I've been working at 16 years old. I work full-time 64 hours a week, 7 days a week. I am exhausted.
We are here today on behalf of every worker and every voter fighting
to protect voting rights. We are here to fight for immigration reform.
As a teacher, I want a better future and planet for our children by addressing gun violence and working together to solving our climate crisis.
There are poor and homeless veterans all over this country. We must stand together to demand an end to this war economy that benefits the wealthy at the cost of poor people's lives and health.
Our government finds it necessary to ban abortion, to say that they are saving our children. But more children die as a result of poverty in this country.
I'm here because I'm holding fast to that promise of freedom that our ancestors fought for. They were fighting for our ability to control our own bodies, to determine our own futures, to be the architects of our own destinies. And that's the fight that we're fighting right now.
This system doesn't provide health care or living wages, but it wages chemical warfare.
We should not be cornered and forced to choose one necessity over another.
I am here to tell you, incarcerated lives matter too. We are forgotten people. We are poor people, and we are suffering.
I have been faced with many challenges in my life due to a broken system that has a long history of punishing the poor while rewarding the corrupt, wealthy class.
This is the consequences that we face. So what our people say is that we are fighting the oldest evil.
If we treat these evils as distinct and isolated from one another, they will continue to undermine our solutions, seeping into this work like toxins, poisoning our progress.
When we think about the global climate crisis that threatens to push 100 million people into poverty by 2030, this is our moment.
So you have to ask yourself, are you an architect of this reconstruction? Will you be willing to do the work to build a stronger foundation and core to America?
It's time for us to stop being passive Christians. We gotta get up.
That's it, bro.
We gotta get off of those comfortable pews.
That's it.
We gotta get out of these churches.
That's it.
We gotta get out here and we gotta advocate for the least of these.
And so we stand on that principle in this country, that no matter where we live, no matter what my background is, no matter who I love, no matter what I can do, at the end of the day, I am deserving to be treated like a human being.
We decide to love, and when you love folk, you hate the fact that they're treated unjustly. You loathe the fact they're treated unfairly. And if you don't do something, the rocks are gonna shout out, and the sun is gonna shine, and the clouds are gonna move.
Our votes this November are not a show of support. They are a demand.
We are here. We are the poor and dispossessed, and we are here.
Yeah, now is our time for a third reconstruction. We are not an insurrection, but we are a resurrection.
Adelante juntos. Adelante juntos. Ni un paso atrás.
On June 18th, 100 to 150,000 people assembled in DC, and there indeed is a non-violent army rising to break every chain of the interlocking injustices of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, militarism, and the war economy, and the distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. We are lifting from the bottom, and we won't be silent anymore. At the Poor People's Campaign, we are shifting the moral narrative, and you can do that right now. We're dropping the link to this video in the comment section, and we want you to send this out to 50 people you know right now, because we will make them hear us. We will have our voices be heard and get our message out all across the nation. We're about to hear directly from folks on the ground building this nonviolent army. who mobilized in their states today. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at some footage from all across the nation, from all of the actions that happened on our National Day of Action.
Got to make sure that we leverage our resources, that we leverage our relationships, that we're our own greatest asset.
Money for jobs and education. Not for war and occupation. Money for jobs and education. Not for war and occupation. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live.
And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live.
We move forward together. We move forward together. We move forward together. When will America wake up? When will America wake up?
And like Joshua, we will march until the walls come tumbling down. Until the walls of oppression come tumbling down. The walls of silencing those so they cannot vote, so their voice cannot be heard, will come tumbling down. We will march, we will run, we will walk.
Sig, this is powerful when we think about where we started some years ago, and then on June 18th, and the numbers were 150,000 plus people, and then more than 2 million people online on June 18th. And we said there were 7 things we were going to do, and one of them was we were going to continue to mobilize in a powerful way. And I know just before the end of this video, this broadcast, you'll be sharing some powerful numbers with us. But before we go there, we want to hear from persons who themselves are impacted and why they say in this moment it is most critical that we mobilize poor and low wealth voters who now represent 33 of the electorate. Those of you who may not be in the campaign, but you're joining us tonight online, 33% of the electorate in this country is now poor and low wealth. On the one hand, that's sad, and that's sad that 43% of the nation poor and low wealth. But it also says something about the power that's possible. In battleground states, where the election of various persons was between 1% and 3%, poor and low wealth people make up over 45% of the election. And when you look at across the country, we've done some analysis. When I asked some years ago, asked Sally Barnes to join with some people, Dr. Barnes, and pull together some analysis, I said, let's put together a report that really lays out what's possible. And in Michigan, for instance, the data shows us that if you just had 1% of poor and low wealth voters who had already registered to vote, but chose not to vote for various reasons, if just 1% would vote, they could outdistance, overcome the margin of victory for any candidate from the presidency on down to the governor's office. In Philadelphia, it's 4%. In North Carolina, it's 19%. In Georgia, it's something like 7%. In Florida, it's something like 4%. And you can go all over the country and you see these realities that so many times people don't even know. There is, as Sig said, an army that's rising, an army that needs to be mobilized and focused, and continuing to let the people know that we don't just have to sit back and be acted upon. We can act in history. We can ultimately shift history and shift public policy. Now that means though we've got to get in the fight. There's a scripture in the Bible that I like to read sometime. My Jewish friend shared it with me. I think it's Psalm 78. And it says, in Ephraim had everything, God gave Ephraim everything he needed to win the battle. But in the time of battle, he chose not to fight. He chose not to fight. We are not making that choice not to fight. We are choosing in the best nonviolent traditions of the world to move and to be engaged. And we know that means you have to have agitation, you have to have litigation, you have to have legislation, and you have to have voter participation. All three of those things that go together, they're not separated out. So first, we want to hear tonight from someone from Wisconsin. And look at this, if we have it, on the screen, some data from Wisconsin. Am I saying it right? Wisconsin. I want to get it wrong, but I know that Pauline was pulling some data up and put it up on the screen if we have it. Just want people to see what the reality is there. And then we have some data from North Carolina, and then some data from Alabama, some data from Wisconsin, and some data from North Carolina, and some data for Alabama. Just give us a second here for it to come up on the screen.
I have the data for North Carolina and the others are coming in.
All right, put up North Carolina first, please. Let me see if I can see it on my screen. I don't see it yet. Oh, here it comes. Here comes the tech. Boom, there it is. See what tech will do for you? In North Carolina, there are 3.4 million eligible poor and low-income voters. Think about that. In 2020, 1.1 million of these did not vote. Now, in 2020, and this is not partisan, I'm just speaking history, there was an election, for instance, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that was decided by less than 600 votes. And 1.1 million of poor and low wealth voters did not vote. There was an election for the Senate, and that election was decided by less than 200,000 votes. And 1.1 million poor and low wealth voters did not vote. The race for the presidency was under 200,000 in terms of the margin of victory. And this is not to blame poor and low wealth voters. Too much of that goes on anyway. This data is to show people the power. It shows right here, you don't have to register 100% of those who either were registered and didn't vote, who are unregistered and didn't vote. You don't have to move 80%. You don't have to move 50%. Just 20% of that 1.1 million is 220,000 people. And 220,000 people far distances any margin of victory that has occurred in the state in the race for the Senate, the race for the governor, or the race for the presidency. And you know, there are forces that don't want us to know that. They want us to think that we're so overwhelmed. They say this state is red, this state is purple, this state is most of the states are unorganized in terms, and we are organizing because what we know is in movement building, you must make them hear you. And one of the ways we make vote hearers is by the number of people that we're able to move and mobilize to the polls. So we got a person from North Carolina was out in the streets. The day is impacted. Tell us about why you were out there and when you see this data, what does it move you to do?
Hey, Reverend Barbara, it keeps me out here in these streets, making sure I get that 1.1 million out here to vote.
And who is this? Let's make sure that the whole nation knows who you are by name.
I am Denisha Rogers. I'm a UU 150 organizer and a GOTV voter registrator organizer. And with that being said, this year, a livable wage is on the ballot. Healthcare is on the ballot. I need that 1.1 million to back us up this year. So I don't have to work so hard. Y'all don't have to work so hard. And we could go home and live in peace, just a little bit lighter than what we've been doing. So with that being said, as long as it's on the ballot, I'm going to vote, and I want everybody else to vote with me this year.
Wow. You know, I think we need to turn that into one of our chants. As long as it's on the ballot, I'm going to vote. As long as it's on the ballot, and I need you to have my back, you know. And isn't it good? You got 1.1 million out there. We'd love to have 100% of them. But look, if we can get 19% of them just this time, we'll work on that can be major change. Let me ask you a question before you get off, because people listen. When you see that and you say, do you think most people know this? That for instance, it wouldn't take 50% or 100%, but just 19% of the folk that are, and 80% of these folk are already registered. So it's not that people aren't registered, it's just moving to the poll. Do you think people know this, or do people often feel like, it's, you know, when you hear the people on the news that you know, it's no need and they have the advantage and we really don't have the power? Do you think a lot of people are like that? And then when they see us in the street, they say it's like a light bulb goes on?
Yes, sir. And actually, I get that response from people. With one of the part-time jobs I have, we knock on the door and we encourage people that's already vote to get out and vote. And the main thing they holler, it ain't gonna make a difference. I don't know. We don't count no way. And I tell them, yes, we do. And we do have a voice. If we can't show our voice, if we can't do nothing else, we can show our voice at the voting vote. So with that being said, especially people of my age group, us young voters, they feel like it don't matter no more.
That's right. And you know, if and anybody that's saying that really knows how powerful you are. You know, they want us to not believe in our own power. We know if you don't vote, it matters, because the folk gonna get in office that'll vote against you. And anybody knows that you can't win a fight that you're not in. And so I'm glad that you're going door to door. I'm glad that you're talking to people and letting them know. And by the way, you all, we should be telling folk that a lot of this stuff on social media that's saying things like it doesn't matter, those are bots. Those are robots that people have unleashed all over social media to cause people to get down and depressed and feel like it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter, it does matter. And the reality of persons who have not voted for whatever reason, it's time to wake folk up and say, come on, don't you want to vote? Come on, go with us and vote and make it. We don't ever say in this movement that voting is the only thing, but certainly you cannot be in a democracy and then sit out. You just can't. Well, look, sister, I know you've been in them streets. We like to say you've been in them streets, and stay out there, and we thank God for you, okay? All right. I think you're on mute, but anyway, we got you. All right.
Thank you.
I hear you. There you go. There you go. Now, do we got Wisconsin up yet?
Yes, we do.
Bam, put it on the screen. It's a coming. Here we go. Now, this is Reverend Dr. Liz's state, and she's going to close us out tonight. But in Wisconsin, there are 1.9 million eligible poor and low-income voters. And in 2020, 650,000 of those did not vote. And that was one of those states, Wisconsin, where the vote, for instance, for the presidency was very, very, very small in terms of margin of victory. We've got somebody who's out there in those streets, out there mobilizing, and they're going to talk to us about what they were doing today and other days and why they are so good. We want to know who's on from Wisconsin tonight.
All right. Glad to be joining you. This is Reverend Ari Douglas, they, them pronouns.
Hey, Rev, how are you doing tonight?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. We had a really great march and a really great candidate listening forum where we invited candidates that are listening, regardless of party, to come and listen to impacted people, speak on homelessness, speak on racism, speak on poverty, speak on over policing that is affecting people in one of the poorest cities in Wisconsin. My neighbor city to the south, Beloit, Wisconsin.
Hey, Reverend, tell me a little bit, because we're talking to people who may just be finding out about the work of the Poor People's Campaign. Now, you said a phrase that a lot of people aren't familiar with. You said you had a forum for the candidates to listen, because normally the candidates talk. Explain to people why we do that and why you believe it's important, particularly as a person, a clergy person.
Absolutely. So I believe as a clergy person that we need to be acting from a point of faith, that what we do, it matters not only on earth, but in heaven, and that heaven is among us. If we can make it so, that's what the our ancestors in the movement were pushing for, that we can make heaven on earth. And so we ask these candidates to come and listen to impacted people. We make sure that all candidates who are running within a area, we chose Beloit to show up, and we did have 4 candidates who were there among the 28 that we invited. So,
and I bet you that was probably one of the first times they were ever invited somewhere to listen to the people as opposed to speak. And and one of the things our campaign is trying to teach politicians that you have to listen to the constituency, and many of them have never heard some of the stories and realities, and that's why sometimes we have what's called an attention deficit. And in the biblical tradition, we're called to cry loud and to spare not. Well, listen, up there in Wisconsin, you got 650,000 people.
Yes.
Low wealth people who are most of them already registered, but they have not voted, and for various reasons. Sometimes people just feel like nobody talks to them. How's the organizing going up there?
Good. We have a lot of people interested, a lot of people that are doing calls to Wisconsin voters. Some of those calls are coming from out of state, but a lot of them are actually coming from in state as well. And we're very, very excited to be focusing on Wisconsin. We know that we can really change the way that Wisconsin is moving if we get all those voters to vote, because it's not just about their vote, it's about who they are, it's about their voice, it's that they matter as people, as individual people, and as all of us together as well, because we know that everyone in, nobody out.
I'm glad you said that, because we don't just invite people to vote, we invite people into a movement that votes. In other words, we don't judge our success just by the election, and we say to folks, listen, these are the things on the ballot: living wages, health care, voting rights, women reproductive rights, addressing militarism, addressing the need for housing. We say that all of these are policy issues. So we invite people into a movement that vote. We don't just say go vote and then we leave folk alone. We invited them into a movement. Doc, well, we're so thankful for your work up there, Reverend, and how you represent the voices of people in Wisconsin. And look, how about we just agree that we're going to go forward together and not one step back?
Not one step back. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you so much. Now, we got one more state. I think it's Alabama. If I'm wrong, team, tell me. North Carolina, Wisconsin. We have some data for Wisconsin, for Alabama. Oh, wow. There it is. Now, in Alabama, as you know, is the state that the Selma, the Montgomery March occurred. It's also the state, the Shelby decision in 2013, when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. And what they did when they gutted the Voting Rights Act, they said that we didn't have racism anymore like we used to have. And so the Congress needed to change the formula for how states were covered under the Voting Rights Act, because certain states had mandatory coverage. In other words, they were automatically covered. I don't know if a lot of people know, all the state had to do ever since 1965, if they were mandatorily covered, all they had to do was not pass a racist voter bill for 10 years, and then they would no longer be covered. All they had to do was just not be racist for 10 years. And none of the states could do that. And so that's why we had something called pre-clearance, that when these states pass a law, it had to be reviewed by the Justice Department and pre-cleared. In other words, they had to say that the law was not going to be some new form of racism. Now, we've got some real work to do in the courts and other places in Alabama. You see up here, out in Alabama, there are 1.9 million eligible voters and low-income voters, 1.9 million. And in 2020, somebody I hear you talking, you might want to put yourself on mute. In 2020, 810,000 did not vote. Now, my understanding is the person who won for Senate, U.S. Senate, didn't win by 800,000 votes. They didn't win by 700,000 votes. I don't think you've had a governor in Alabama that has won by 800,000 votes. I don't think that you've had a president to win by more than 400,000 votes. What we know is the number of eligible poor and low wealth voters, just like in other states in Alabama, far outdistances the margin of victories in any campaign, even campaigns for things like state Senate and state House of Representatives. So we got some folk on from Alabama who are still fighting, are still standing, and we want them to talk to us tonight about why are they still moving, what's going on in Alabama, what kind of organizing is happening. Because some people tell us, well, Alabama, Mississippi, they're not battleground states. We say, yes, they are, because we have human beings there. We have people who are going to fight. And if more people knew this data, they would understand that not only is it a battleground, we actually can win if we can come together and mobilize. Who's on from Alabama tonight?
Hey, Reverend Bob, this is Callie Greer, and I have with me Mr. Brian Nolan. And I would just like to say, if Alabama and Mississippi is not a battleground state, well, what are battleground states? When we're fighting for clean water, in Alabama and Mississippi, we fight for clean water, just to have clean water. So if these states are not battleground states, tell me what a war is. We will come, we'll go. All the way from Selma down here in Mobile, Alabama. We had a really good day today, turning out to march down Main Street. Mr. Nolan was there. He's going to share his story. He's a retired vet. Yes, sir. He wanted to tell this story because Mr. Nolan is very sick. He might not have a chance to tell it again. So he wants to get it on the record. So I'm not going to be long. But I cut my teeth out with the Poor People Campaign in the real war. In the real war, I've been advocating in the community, organizing and stuff, but I had to suit up to be in the Poor People's Campaign. Like suit up and drive to Washington D.C. and turn around and come right back home and get back on the streets. I'm talking about suit up for the real war. The South, when things are won in the South, it changes the world. It changes the world, and this is the battleground. And you all that don't know my story, just go to Poor People's Campaign page and look at it. Callie Greer, and we'll talk in there when I tell about business how I lost my daughter for lack of health care insurance, and I call it political murder. So, I'm out here. I cannot be out here. Where else can I be? I got to be out here. I got grandkids. You got grandkids. I got other folks that are in danger of being left out here to die, without health care, without clean water, without unsheltered, without real food. Going to prison, being locked up. People take the pandemic money and not want to house people that are unhoused and building 2 mega prisons.
Wow. Hold it, Callie. Wait,
Yes, sir.
You got to say, now, wait a minute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You tell, and we talk about policy. The 810,000 poor low wealth voters that did not vote, You're saying in the middle of the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
that the policymakers who currently in charge
They're
took
sitting in the
money,
seat right now.
right? And I think you had one the other night. What's his name? Tupperville or somebody.
Yeah.
Declared that everybody wants what he has, and he's
And
not.
what is that?
Yeah,
A
we don't know
lying
what that
mouth.
is.
A
That's
lying
right.
mouth. He's a liar.
That's
He's
right.
a liar.
But you said they built 2 mega prisons?
They're building 2 mega prisons from the pandemic. The American rescue money. And we
Right.
got homeless people that they're trying to put in jail because they don't have a place to stay. We got people that don't have health care insurance, like my daughter, that are going to die because the medical issue has gotten too bad. They took that money that was for these people, right?
That's right.
And now they're going to be a 2 mega prison. I said, oh, I see your vision. So they're going to house them in the prison. So we're going to go back to this slavery thing. Okay, I see you though. But I'm going to stay out here. I'm going to beat these streets. I ain't going to be quiet. I'm loud.
No. And people need to hear it just that raw. And then
Just like that.
I understand. You say voting doesn't matter. Well, let me tell you, not voting surely matters, because if you don't vote, it's the difference between you getting living wages or getting mega prisons. I mean, it's just that real.
It's just,
and I love the way you said, we have to redefine what's a battleground, because the pundits try to make us think battlegrounds is where the polls say, the margins is within 5%. We have to say battlegrounds is wherever human beings are, wherever people's rights are being hurt and stopped. And before you go to our dear brother, those of you that are listening in tonight, you should know something about where Cali Greer stays in Selma. Now, in the civil rights movement, and one of the what's his name, Bernard
Lafayette.
Lafayette told me
I was
this
with him yesterday.
Yeah, he said to me one day, he said, Reverend Barber, you need to understand that people were sent to Selma when they wanted to get rid of them in the civil rights movement. In other words, you didn't go to Selma expecting things were going to happen. You went to Selma basically saying nobody could move Selma. And yet in the very city that people thought nothing could happen, that's where we end up getting the movement that brings us to voting rights. And by the way, and Callie would agree with this, it wasn't when John Lewis or Martin King or them came there, because the folk in Selma had been fighting 40-some years.
Yeah,
right?
in the 40s, that's right.
That's right, in the 40s. And I think it was on the day that they had to march on Washington, Diane Nash and her husband is 63 were down in Selma mobilizing 2 years before 65. So we just need to know this history, battlegrounds wherever there is a need to battle for justice and battle for rights. Let's hear from our brother. I want to hear from him tonight on the record. He's a vet. What service, my friend?
I served 5.5 years in the Marine Corps.
5.5 years in the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps. Well, bless you, sir. Are you from Selma originally?
No, sir.
Where you from?
I was born in Florida, but I've been raised in Alabama since 1969.
Born in Florida, raised in Alabama. Well, my brother, we know you like a lot of us, despite our sicknesses, you're battling. You're speaking to folk all over the nation tonight, all over the nation. And this will be on filmed and on record for eternity. So talk to us tonight as a veteran, as somebody from there, why it is you are out there today and why you are saying to folk, listen, if there's ever been a time we need to vote for democracy and justice, we sure do need to vote now.
Well, I'll make it short and sweet.
Take your time.
I'm 59 years old this year. I got terminal cancer. They told me I wouldn't live to be 57. I've made it 2 years past there without all their medications. I was put in the street because of the system. They refused to give me my disability, and they held me off till I didn't qualify for it anymore. So they gave me SSI. But at the time, they only gave me $318 a month to live off of. I owned a trailer and an RV. The trailer got burned down. I couldn't pay the lot rent for both places. I got evicted in my RV. It had less than 15,000 original miles on it. It was worth some money. I'm out in the street with it because it hadn't been moved in 5 years. I had flat tires, dry rotted. The police kept harassing me, telling me, oh, you can't stay here. You got to move. I said, what is the problem? They said, well, you got too much interaction with the homeless people. I told them, I said, sir, I've been feeding the homeless since 2016. That's when I got diagnosed with cancer. I tried to turn my life around and do something good for change. They kept harassing me until a year and a half ago, they took my RV from me. They impounded it. It was worth $11,000. They sold it for $1,500 at a police auction. That left me homeless. I've been out here in the street for over 2 years. I've been signed up for this housing first movement for almost 4 years. And I just got an interview 2 days ago.
Wow.
I signed up with the VA 2 years ago, and they haven't done anything for me. They told me, oh, well, you should have signed up when you was 55. You qualified for benefits. Well, where are they? How come I don't have them now? How come you're not even responding to me? The Housing First finally got through their VA part, and they provided me with a motel room, but they're supposedly going to help me with my medical. Like I said, they told me I'm in stages. I'm in stage 5 cancer right now. I have trouble breathing. I've got COPD problems, and I'm a diabetic. I can't have my insulin out here on the street. I have no way to keep it. Plus, if I did have it, they would try to steal it from me, the needles and everything else.
That's right.
Any kind of medicine I have. So, that's why people on the street can't get health care.
That's right.
Or can't get the proper care anyway.
And that's all because of policy. In other words, somebody elected in office is ignoring, and they don't believe that folk have the power, and so they ignore it. And so here you have fought for the country. What war did you fight in?
I didn't fight in the war, sir. I was in there from 79 to 85.
79 to 85. Well, you were still
That's why they told me I don't qualify for any special benefits, because I wasn't in there during the time of war.
Yeah, well.
But I've been to 7 different countries.
That's right. And you were part of the war economy. And isn't it, the sad part is that the contractors who are making billions of dollars can get their money, but here you are, and you can't. Now, one of the things I want to say to you and say to Callie after this call tomorrow, Callie, I want to talk to you and brother and about some buttons we need to push and we need to fight, because not only do we want to hear folks' stories, and for those of you listening around the nation, see, this is real. This right here is what you're hearing is real. This brother, he says, look, I want to say this because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day. 5th stage cancer. He's in a state where the people that got elected have denied health care, denied Medicaid expansion. This is real. He's in a state where the amount of money that Alabama put toward needless wars, we have some data on that, could have done so much. He's here he is, and one military contract to Boeing, who builds planes for the military, one contract, 1 year could pay for everybody in all the southern states that have been denied health care. Here's a man that says the police, we talk about shooting, and we don't talk about harassment enough. People get moved when a cop shoots somebody unarmed, but there are a lot of other ways that racist police, I'm not talking about those that do their job correctly, racist police and all, harass people. He said, took his RV and says, look, we don't like the way you're helping homeless people. and took his RV that was worth 11,000, sold it for 1,500, and put him on the street. And it took 2 years. I want y'all to hear this, 2 years. So I want to talk to you, and I'm gonna grab some other people, but I want folk to hear you. Now tell folk now from your heart and your experience why they don't need to sit out and not participate in the democracy, particularly in voting. And you know, if those 800,000 people would turn up, if just 50% of them would turn up, 30% in Alabama, it could be a whole totally new day, Callie. And that's what we got to get for. But my brother, tell folk all over the nation, talk to folk and tell them, look, why they don't need to sit out of these elections.
Sir, like I said, I'm 59. All my life, I followed the policy. I've done what I thought was right or what was legal. They told me that when I applied for my disability in 2012, I qualified for $1,898 a month. They held me off, sent me to court, telling me, oh, you got a good education. You can go get a sit-down job answering phones for $8 an hour and make good money. So you don't qualify for disability. I got diagnosed with cancer December 2016. I started chemo treatments in September 2017. They said, oh, just because you have cancer doesn't make you disabled. They would not qualify me for SSI until 2 months after I started chemo treatments. And they only give you minimum because you can't live on your own. Right. I was living with my father.
That's right.
At the time in 2017. And they said, well, you're living with somebody, so they're providing your place to live, so it don't cost you nothing. So we're only going to give you $318.
And so everything that you have faced is because of some policy somewhere, somebody that either is in a paid position because who got elected, but you ran up against policy. And what I want folks to hear is that bad policy is the result of bad politicians. And bad politicians are the result of people either voting them in or either people not voting and allowing them to get in.
Yes, sir.
You don't get bad policy without bad politicians, and politicians do not get in office unless they get elected either by the votes they win or the apathy of the votes that are never cast. And when that happens, a brother like our brother, and I bet you he represents stories all over this country that are the same. This man has run into policies that are backwards. And we have to be about the business. If we want if we want to not hear stories like this, if we don't want this to be going on in America, then we have to change policies. And you can't change policies unless you change the politicians.
Can I say one more thing, Bishop?
You sure may.
Okay. From April of this year to September of this year, there were in a little 1 square mile radius, there was over 150 homeless people in April.
Where is this?
In Tillman's Corner, Alabama, Mobile.
Oh my goodness.
Little community out here, Tillman's Corner.
Uh-huh.
We are now over 350 homeless people in this 1 square area. The police are telling us, well, if you don't like us harassing you, get out of city limits.
And that's
what they're telling.
And say that name again of that community.
Tillman's Corner, Alabama.
Tillman's Corner, Alabama, right outside of Mobile.
Yes, sir.
How far is
they push the homeless people from downtown out here.
How far?
Now they're complaining about spreading out.
How far is Mobile from Jackson?
Approximately.
Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi. About 3.5 hours, 4 hours.
And other veterans are out there, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's where you currently were before they gave you the hotel room?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The hotel is in that area too,
The
Bishop.
hotel is in.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, I'm glad, my brother, that you said this. I want you to know that our movement is not just going to hear this and then say, oh, this is a story and move on. Callie, I want to talk to you probably tomorrow, probably maybe get Liz on. But I want to thank you, brother, for the courage. I want to pray God's continual strength in your body. You know, the bottom line is God ultimately has the last word. But then we have to be honest, and I know you don't mind us being honest, is that just like with Callie's daughter, it was not God that caused that situation. And she said herself it was policy murder. And I'm glad you have the courage to come on tonight and say, while I'm living, I'm gonna make sure folk hear this story. This should not be. You should have had all the treatment.
Right.
I'm gonna try to join with you and fight it while you still have breath in your body. But I make a promise to you, brother, and on behalf of this movement, that we are not going to ever quit, and that your story, we're gonna cut this story from tonight and send it everywhere. We're gonna even send it to some other folk that need to hear it. In fact, I'm going to tell the team right now, see, I want you to grab this video and get it to NPR. It's amazing, brother, that you would come on tonight, and NPR just asked us yesterday to give us 5 stories that show how shameful the realities of poverty exist. And I know SIG is on. I want her to grab this, and we're going to send it to NPR and tell them that they need to talk directly to you. That's the National Public Broadcaster. They need to, the world, the nation needs to hear your story, not just to hear it and say, oh, that's bad, but they need to hear it and then fight the change. And I pray that what you said here tonight in your continuing fight will not be in vain. It will not be in vain. Listen, y'all, this is real. This is as real as it gets. And if we ever needed to vote for democracy and justice, if we ever needed to recognize that health care is on the ballot, justice is on the ballot, wages is on the ballot, somebody being able to get their SSI or get their retirement, all those things are on the ballot. Veterans being treated right when they finish serving, and not just being treated like throwaways. All of this is on the ballot, and the ballot is a key to electing people who can change the policies that create so much unnecessary misery. Somebody says sometimes that our movement is not happy enough to draw people in. They said, Bobby, you all tell too many sad stories. Well, we don't tell sad stories, we tell real stories. And if real stories don't move you, then there's something wrong with your morality, something wrong with your heart. My brother, thank you. Thank you, my sisters from North Carolina. Thank you, my reverend from Wisconsin. And now to close us out and to send us forward to continue to fight. Because SIG, come on and show what we've already done, what you all have done in the last few days. And then Reverend Dr. Liz Harris, if she's off the plane, our co-chair, is going to close us out tonight as we continue to be charged to do what we need to do. Sig, are you there?
I am, Bishop. I'm ready. Pauline, please pull up that call to action. So as of today, we have texted 2.6 million people all across this nation. We've trained 560 text bank volunteers. We've had over 165 canvases directly in the streets talking to people because we're serious about getting out the vote of poor and low wealth voters, because we know that this sleeping giant is being awakened and has some real power when it comes to this election season. But we're not done yet. We're going to reach out to at least 5 million low propensity voters this season. And that's voters who who could vote and would vote if someone was talking to them about the issues that matter. So we're sick and tired of broken promises. In this election season, we're making them hear us. So we want every single person who is watching this live stream from all across the nation to get involved today. Text VOTE to 38542 to get information how to get involved in your local community. Go knock on some doors, pass out some flyers, go to your local church or congregations or community groups to get the word out about the power of poor and low wealth voters. We also want you to check your voter registration status and voting location. We picked today, October 15th, because a lot of early voting sites are open starting today. So you can actually vote early. There's same day registration in a lot of states. And we want to make sure that everyone has a plan to vote, their friends and family have a plan to vote, and they are getting out to vote this midterm election season. So please, there's also going to be a link dropped in the comment section of how to sign up for our text bank program, how to get to the TurboVote site. You can also go to poorpeoplescampaign.turbovote.org to check your voter registration and voting location. And again, if you text VOTE right now to 38542, you can sign up for the campaign and learn how to get involved in your local community to get the vote out this election season. And now I want to invite Reverend Dr.
Stig, before, listen, thank you, all of you, our organizers. Thank you all. Thank you. 500. Let's get 500 more, y'all, before we get to the end of the season. We have 1,000 people. 500 have done 2.6 million, and we're not even through. Imagine we had 1,000. If you want to join, as Sig said, you want to join, this is the time. If you want to do something that can transform and change stories. And Brianna Zig, before we go to Dr. Theo Harris, she pulled up something. She just said, look, I'm going to show something. I know it wasn't on the agenda, but I love it when you all are what I call it, you ad-lib in the moment. Y'all from around the country, and I'm using my Southern language, y'all, there are 438,000 people in Alabama. You heard that story with our brother, 59 years old? 483,000 people in Alabama without health insurance. That is a shame before the living God. And all of these southern states have denied health care, but all of these southern states also have the largest number of poor and low wealth voters. And all of these southern states, the number of poor and low wealth voters who aren't voting could change everything. Could change. This number doesn't have to exist. A large portion of this is because these states deny Medicaid expansion. But I want you to hear this. We are not powerless. And spread that message. In these very same states, poor and low wealth people energized around the fight to change the number you see on that screen can win. It's happened before. It happened in the first Reconstruction, 1800, when Black and white folk came together and changed the South, even though it had to happen under armed guards and protection of the army, the American army, because there was so much violence. But it can happen again today. And I want us to be mobilized and energized and inspired. And when you see a number like that, it should make you spiritually furious. But it also should make you feel spiritually faithful to say, I'm going to do my part in mobilizing people, because this doesn't have to exist. That number 483,000 exists because of who sits in office. Who sits in office. And most of them are winning by default. They're not winning because they're the best politicians. They're not winning because they're so smart. Not even winning because they have a lot of money. They're winning because by default, because too many people who should be organized are not. We're going to change that. We are changing that. We must change that, because this number, and our brother is in that number, the brother you just heard is in that number right there. That's almost 500,000 people who are unnecessarily existing without health care. But you know what? And Liz, I think you'll grab on this. If that brother that just came on saying they got fifth stage cancer, but he's in these streets, he's out here feeding the homeless among the homeless, he's willing to fight. You know what I think? None of us have any excuse but to join him and the thousands of others like him. And let's fight, no matter how long it takes, to turn some things around. Zig, you've been powerful tonight. Your team has been powerful tonight. All of you all have been powerful. Bree, thank you for bringing that up and putting it on the screen. Put it in the chat as well. And also let people know where they can go to get all of the data for these states so that they have the data that they need to have conversations and Zoom calls and whatever. Move people by the numbers. Tell the true story. Put a face on these realities and move people into action, because these are the times in which we live in. My dear sister Liz, co-chair, powerful sister, I know you got a word for us tonight. I know you got a word for us tonight.
Well, Bishop Barber, it is a powerful day and a powerful afternoon, and this has been just amazing. I mean, to see the videos and the images from 25 states marching on Main Street, saying we're not going to be silent, we're not going to be unheard, we're not going to be unseen. And I was thinking about all of this and the powerful set of visionary, bold demands that this campaign has come up with and put out there, out of the struggles for healthcare, the struggles against police, harassing homeless people, the struggles for decent housing, and thinking about, that 14-point plan, that agenda, that third reconstruction that we're rising around. You have said it already. Everyone that has been on this gathering, again, has said it already, that it does not have to be this way. But we have to build the compelling power, the organizing power, the protest power, but the voting power to be able to make those in power say yes, and say that we're going to vote them out when they don't pass living wages, when they don't pass healthcare, when they don't guarantee us decent housing and immigrant rights and indigenous sovereignty and rights. And so I'm thinking about those demands of fair taxation and equal protection under the law. I'm thinking about those demands that are our votes around living wages and the right to form and join unions. I'm thinking about those demands about adequate nutrition and school and a debt-free life. Because again, as you have told us, Bishop Barber, and as Nobel laureate economists have told us, poverty, inequality is far costlier than it is to actually solve these problems with good policy, with moral policy, with policy that lifts from the bottom so everybody can rise. So we are going to continue to mobilize. We're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to register people for this movement and engage and empower and engage folks in this movement that is already, it's not even a going to, is already waking the sleeping giant, the 35, 37 million people across this country who are poor and low income and registered to vote, but who have to hear their name, hear their condition, and are hearing that because we in the Poor People's Campaign in states across the country are making our voices heard. So I am so honored to be amongst the people that have gathered today, that have marched on Main Street, that have made our media and our people hear about this nonviolent army rising. And I commit, like everyone else here does, to moving forward together and not one step back as we keep on voting and organizing and mobilizing so that people can actually really have the right to live that this nation, this world should guarantee. So
it's amazing, and so much power here rising up.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Liz. And as a New Testament scholar, we know the scripture that says if we don't cry out, even the rocks will cry out. Well, I wanted to say, I was thinking about that today. My grandmama used to say, "Ain't no rock gonna be louder than me."
That's right.
Ain't no rock gonna be louder than me. So, but I believe also, not only if we don't cry out, the rocks will cry. I believe if we cry out, the rocks will even join us. And and the whole universe, the earth itself, there's a kind of groaning that's going on right now, that's happening, and I believe we are a part of it. There's a scholar named Otto Schwammer. He says if you look down through history gets changed when folk learn their ABCs. And I said, what is he talking about? And he said ABCs is action, awareness, awareness-based collective action, awareness-based collective action, awareness-based collective action. In other words, we become aware. And that's why we have to hear these stories, no matter how hard they are, because it opens our eyes. And when we become aware, then we can move into collective action. That there is something about seeing a problem and hearing a problem and knowing that it could be us or that it is us that has the power to move us into action. And so based on that, that's why we must engage in this moral action, and we will engage, and we will not turn back, and we will not stop speaking and acting and believing and living out the truth. I come from a tradition, the old deacons used to pray, Lord, keep me, and so I can speak until my tongue is clear, is stuck to the cleave. They said the cleavage of cleave of my mouth. In other words, what they were saying was, I'm not going to stop speaking the truth until I can't speak anymore. But truth in a time of lies is revolutionary. And so the truth is, we don't have a scarcity of resources. The truth is, we don't have a scarcity of ideas. We know how to help sick folk get well. Give them health care. We know how to help people in the time of inflation. Pay them a living wage. Pay them a living wage. We know. So we don't have a scarcity of ideas. What we do have is a scarcity of consciousness. And consciousness, in order to change consciousness, it requires words and deeds. It requires a changing the narrative and then changing the actions that moves people until there is awareness-based collective action. Awareness-based collective action. Don't y'all forget that. We're gonna be talking about it some more. Awareness-based collective action. Take care. Love you all. Thank God for you 1,000 times over. And let's be the difference. Let's be the difference that we believe must happen in order for things to change and in order for us as a nation to lift from the bottom so that everybody rises and everybody can live. God bless you all. Take care. Forward together, not one step back.
Not one step back.